No one suspected a Hollywood legend was losing her memory, or that the king of rock and roll was dying from the inside out. Behind glamorous headlines, autopsies of stars revealed bizarre medical conditions long misread as scandal or weakness. These shocking discoveries did not just rewrite their legacies, they exposed how judgment, secrecy, and misdiagnosis blinded everyone to the real battles their bodies were fighting. So what exactly did death reveal that life and Hollywood refused to see? Rita Hayworth was once the face of Hollywood glamour, but behind the scenes her world was quietly unraveling. In the 1960s, she began to forget lines in the middle of scenes, sometimes wandering off set or lashing out at those around her. Colleagues whispered about her drinking, and tabloids ran headlines calling her unstable and unreliable. Every stumble, every missed cue was chalked up to alcoholism or the supposed fragility of aging actresses. The truth was far more complicated. Family members, especially her daughter Yasmin Aga Khan, watched as confusion and mood swings replaced the vibrant woman they knew. Yasmin later described the heartbreak of seeing her mother struggle to recognize friends or remember simple routines. Yet for years, doctors and studios insisted the problem was alcohol. No one considered that something else might be happening inside her brain. In 1976, a public incident at Heathrow Airport made headlines. Hayworth, disoriented and agitated, was photographed looking disheveled. The press seized on the image and labeled her a drunk diva. But beneath the sensationalism, her family saw a woman lost in a fog no one could explain. It was not until 1979, after years of decline, that psychiatrist Ronald Feeve finally diagnosed her with early-onset Alzheimer's disease. The diagnosis was confirmed through clinical exams showing the telltale plaques and tangles in her brain. When the news became public in 1981, it stunned Hollywood and the world. Hayworth was only in her early 60s, and few even knew Alzheimer's could strike so young. For Yasmin, the diagnosis brought a mix of relief and sorrow. She later said that they had all thought it was alcoholism and alcoholic dementia, and that there was a profound relief in simply getting a diagnosis. Her nephew, Richard Cancino, admitted that it was upsetting. They all thought she was drinking, and that he felt guilty. Hayworth's case changed everything. She became the first celebrity face of Alzheimer's, putting a name and a story to a disease that had been largely ignored. Her daughter launched a campaign for awareness, raising millions for research and support. In the decade after Hayworth's diagnosis, funding for Alzheimer's research in the United States jumped from $146 million to over $650 million. Medical experts now say that with today's tools, genetic testing and brain scans, her disease would have been recognized much earlier. But in her lifetime, the stigma of addiction and the bias against aging women in Hollywood kept the truth hidden. Rita Hayworth's final years forced the industry and a watching public to reconsider what it means when a star begins to fade. Her story became proof that behind the rumors and headlines, there is often a medical reality no one wants to see. Elvis Presley's final years were dogged by stories of excess, late-night binges, erratic performances, and a medicine cabinet overflowing with prescription bottles. Tabloids painted him as a casualty of fame, undone by addiction and self-indulgence. But inside Graceland, Presley was fighting a battle no one could see. The truth only surfaced after his death, when the autopsy revealed a body ravaged not by a single overdose, but by a hidden, relentless disease. The medical examiner's report described a colon twice the normal length, packed with 25 to 30 pounds of impacted stool. This was megacolon, an extreme dilation of the large intestine, the result of years of chronic constipation. Some material had been trapped in his system for months. The colon walls were stretched and weakened, unable to contract. Doctors found signs of paralytic ileus, a condition where the gut muscles stop moving entirely. The bowels had become a dead end, and toxins were leaching back into his bloodstream, straining his liver and kidneys. Prescription records from Dr. George Nicopolis, called Dr. Nick, showed that in the last decade of Presley's life, he was prescribed more than 8,000 pills, painkillers, tranquilizers, sleeping tablets, and laxatives. The drugs were meant to keep him performing, to treat pain and insomnia, but they masked the underlying problem. Opioids and sedatives slow gut motility, making constipation worse. Presley's bloating, fatigue, and swelling were all signs of a body in systemic distress. By 1977, he was taking enough medication for 10 people, but no one intervened to address the root cause. The autopsy's most chilling detail was the mechanism of death. Presley collapsed in the bathroom, likely while straining to defecate. The effort triggered what pathologists call the Valsalva maneuver, when abdominal pressure rises and blood flow to the heart can suddenly drop. For someone with a heart already twice normal size and organs under toxic stress, this was catastrophic. The official cause was cardiac arrhythmia, but the true story was a slow-motion collapse, years in the making. Forensic pathologists who reviewed the findings have said plainly, Elvis's body was physically incapable of surviving his lifestyle any longer. The pills did not kill him outright. They hid the signs of a catastrophic gastrointestinal failure. The myth of a single reckless overdose crumbles against the evidence of a body that had been breaking down piece by piece. In the end, it was not just the drugs or the fame that proved fatal, but an unseen medical crisis left untreated, its warning signs lost beneath the glare of celebrity and the haze of prescription bottles. Montgomery Clift's life split in two after a car crash in 1956, just blocks from Elizabeth Taylor's house. The impact crushed his jaw, nose, and cheekbones, leaving scars that surgeons could only partially repair. Taylor saved his life that night, but the damage went far beyond the surface. The change was not only physical, it was medical. Hospital records mentioned concussion and facial trauma, yet no neurological tests were done because brain imaging was not available. Weeks later, Clift returned to work, still swollen and in pain, relying on painkillers and alcohol. Friends noticed a stark change. The once magnetic actor became withdrawn, suspicious, and unpredictable. Studio memos labeled him difficult, and they blamed addiction for his decline. No one considered a medical cause for his behavior. When Clift died in 1966 at age 45, the autopsy listed heart disease and hypothyroidism, but no brain injury was recorded, and no post-mortem neurological exam was performed. Today, specialists believe the crash likely caused lasting brain trauma, explaining his sudden shift. In Clift's era, the limits of medicine left him misunderstood and untreated. Rumors swirled after Brittany Murphy's sudden death at age 32, but the official autopsy delivered a far more complex reality. The coroner's report named 3 culprits: acute pneumonia, severe anemia, and a mix of prescription and over-the-counter drugs. Her hemoglobin was measured at just 8.4 grams per deciliter, dangerously low, signaling her blood was carrying far less oxygen than normal. Pathologists found evidence of a staphylococcal respiratory infection that had gone untreated, leaving her lungs struggling to function. At the same time, toxicology revealed multiple cold medications and painkillers in her system, including decongestants that can suppress breathing even at standard doses. None of the drugs alone reached fatal levels, but together they created a perfect storm. The anemia had weakened her body for weeks, making it harder to fight off infection or recover from even a mild illness. By the time she collapsed in her Hollywood Hills home, her immune system was already overwhelmed. The findings dismantled the narrative of chaos and excess, revealing a slow, silent breakdown that no one saw coming. Bruce Lee's physical discipline was legendary, fueling the idea that he was almost superhuman. But on July 20th, 1973, his body betrayed him in a way no one could have predicted. That afternoon in Hong Kong, Lee complained of a headache and took a single Equagesic tablet, a common painkiller that combined aspirin and meprobamate. Within hours, he was found unresponsive. The autopsy revealed a brain weighing 1,575 grams, about 12% heavier than average. This dramatic swelling, cerebral edema, appeared with no sign of trauma, injury, or overdose. Coroner Donald Tier, flown in from London, said that Lee died from hypersensitivity to something in Equagesic. The reaction was so rare that it defied immediate explanation. Lee's body showed no evidence of violence, poisoning, or underlying disease. Instead, a single dose triggered an idiosyncratic response that breached the blood-brain barrier and flooded his brain with fluid. The official verdict was misadventure, an unpredictable, fatal allergic-type reaction. For all his strength, Lee's biology held a hidden vulnerability, one that no amount of discipline or training could ever overcome. Today, silent illnesses still go misread as personal failings, on and off camera. Medicine advances, but stigma lingers. Until we question what's beneath the surface, countless stories risk the same fate, misunderstood, misjudged, and only fully seen far too late. What would we discover if we truly looked? A studio contract guaranteed glamour, but for stars like James Dean and Marilyn Monroe, Hollywood's spotlight masked relentless pressure and, in some cases, lethal consequences. Dean's crash and Monroe's overdose are more than lost legends. They are evidence of a system that prized image over survival. How did these icons become tragedies? And why did the warnings go unheeded? Their stories set the stage for Hollywood's most haunting pattern. James Dean's rise was fast and unforgettable. In less than 2 years, he went from unknown to the face of a new generation, starring in East of Eden, Rebel Without a Cause, and Giant. The studios packaged him as the ultimate rebel, but away from the cameras, he chased real adrenaline. Dean's passion for racing was no secret. He competed at Palm Springs and Santa Barbara, and his letters spoke of the freedom he found on the track. Warner Brothers promoted his moody, thrill-seeking image, yet there is no evidence they ever tried to curb his dangerous hobby. No contracts, no insurance memos, no studio warnings. Just a young star behind the wheel of a Porsche 550 Spider, heading to Salinas for another race. On September 30th, 1955, Dean set out with mechanic Rolf Wutherick. That afternoon, he was ticketed for speeding, 65 in a 55 zone, just hours before the crash. Near Cholame, California, at the junction of Route 46 and Route 41, a Ford Tudor turned across his lane. The impact was nearly head-on. Dean, just 24, died instantly from a broken neck. Wutherick survived with serious injuries. The inquest ruled the death accidental, noting the other driver's unsafe turn. Dean had finished filming Giant, but never completed his dialogue looping. Future roles, still under contract, vanished overnight. Warner Brothers and his estate froze his image in time, and publicity photos, re-released films, and merchandise all reinforced the legend of an artist who would remain forever young. Dean's story became the template for a myth, the star who burns bright, takes risks, and leaves behind a world that never gets to see what comes next. That pattern continues to echo through Hollywood history. Marilyn Monroe's ascent began in wartime factories and Hollywood casting offices, but by her mid-30s, she was the most recognizable face in the world. Studio contracts dictated everything: her hair color, her diet, even her bedtime. The public image was flawless: red lips, white dresses, effortless laughter. Behind closed doors, Monroe's life was governed by a carousel of doctors and prescriptions. Insomnia and anxiety became constants. By 1962, she was under the care of multiple physicians, each prescribing barbiturates and sedatives, Nembutal, chloral hydrate, and others, often without coordination. Studio memos from Fox cataloged her missed days on set for Something's Got to Give, citing illness, but privately blaming instability and over-medication. When Fox suspended her in June, the official line was health problems. Internally, executives debated whether she was insurable at all. On the night of August 4th, 1962, Monroe retreated to her Brentwood home. The following morning, she was found dead at age 36. The coroner's report listed acute barbiturate poisoning with levels far above therapeutic range and noted a history of prior overdoses and depression. The official ruling was probable suicide. No evidence of forced entry, no note, just a bedroom littered with pill bottles from different doctors. Press stories highlighted heartbreak and exhaustion. Decades later, the facts remain: overlapping prescriptions, fragmented medical oversight, and a system more invested in keeping its star working than in keeping her well. Monroe's death became a cultural myth, but the records point to a tragedy shaped not just by fame, but by the failures of those entrusted with her care. In August 8, 1969, Sharon Tate was just 26, celebrated for her roles in films like Valley of the Dolls and The Wrecking Crew. She was 8.5 months pregnant, living with director Roman Polanski at a rented home on Cielo Drive. Late on the night, 4 followers of Charles Manson, Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Linda Kasabian, arrived at the property. Watson climbed a telephone pole and cut the line, leaving the house isolated. The group avoided the main gate, scaling a brushy embankment to slip undetected onto the grounds. There was no professional security, no alarm system, just a gate and the assumption that fame and privacy meant safety. Inside, Tate was spending the evening with friends: Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, and Wojciech Frykowski. The housekeeper had left hours earlier. The intruders confronted Stephen Parent, a visitor in the guest house, and shot him before forcing their way into the main residence. Over the next hour, the Manson followers bound and attacked the occupants. Sharon Tate pleaded for the life of her unborn child, but the killers showed no mercy. By dawn on August 9, 1969, all 5 victims were dead. Tate had been stabbed 16 times. The word pig was scrawled in her blood on the front door. The brutality of the murders sent shockwaves through Hollywood. For an industry accustomed to publicity scandals and private heartbreak, the Cielo Drive killings shattered any illusion of security. In the months that followed, celebrities rushed to install gates, alarms, and hire guards. The message was clear: fame offered no protection against random violence. Sharon Tate's death was not just a personal tragedy, it was a public reckoning for Hollywood's sense of invulnerability. Natalie Wood's final hours unfolded aboard the yacht Splendor, anchored off Catalina Island on November 28, 1981. She had spent the evening with her husband Robert Wagner, actor Christopher Walken, and the boat's captain Dennis Devers. Accounts from that night remain tangled. Witnesses described a heated argument at a local restaurant, followed by rising tension back on the yacht. Sometime after midnight, Wood vanished. The next morning, at 7:44 on November 29, 1981, her body was found floating in a cove with a dinghy beached nearby. She was 43 years old. The original investigation, led by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, concluded quickly. The coroner's report cited accidental drowning, noting bruises likely caused by efforts to climb into the dinghy. No evidence of foul play was found, and the case was closed in just 2 weeks. Yet questions never faded. Bruises on Wood's arms and face, a scratch on her neck, and conflicting statements from those aboard the yacht fueled decades of speculation. Captain DeVern's later accounts, contradicting his initial statements, suggested a more violent argument and raised doubts about how swiftly Wagner responded when Wood was discovered missing. In 2011, the case was reopened, drawing on new witness reports and a fresh review of the evidence. The following year, 2012, The coroner amended Wood's death certificate, changing the cause from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors. The amendment cited unexplained injuries and uncertainty about how she entered the water. In 2018, Robert Wagner was named a person of interest, as investigators noted inconsistencies in his statements. No charges have ever been filed. The official record now acknowledges what the public sensed all along. The full story of Natalie Wood's death remains unresolved, suspended between accident and unanswered questions. River Phoenix arrived at the Viper Room on the night of October 30th, 1993, slipping into the thrum of West Hollywood's club scene. He was 23, already celebrated for roles in films like Stand By Me and My Own Private Idaho. Inside the club, the atmosphere was permissive, drinks flowed, and in the VIP corners, drugs changed hands with little concern. By midnight, Phoenix had ingested a mix of cocaine and morphine, a combination that would prove lethal. Witnesses later described him as unsteady and anxious, moving between the bar and the sidewalk. Just after 1 in the morning, he collapsed outside on Sunset Boulevard. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but the damage was irreversible. The coroner's report listed acute, multiple drug intoxication, with toxicology revealing high levels of cocaine and morphine, traces of marijuana, and Valium. Hollywood's party culture offered easy access and few boundaries, leaving young stars like Phoenix with little real protection. His death was not just a personal loss, but a warning to an industry that too often looked away. Brandon Lee arrived on the set of The Crow in March 1993, ready to take on his first major leading role. At 28, he was poised to step out from his father's shadow. On March 31st, during a late-night shoot in Wilmington, North Carolina, a scene called for Lee's character to be shot. The revolver in use was supposed to fire blanks. Instead, a lead slug from a dummy round left lodged in the barrel during an earlier setup was propelled into his abdomen when a blank was fired. Emergency surgery failed to save him. Investigators traced the tragedy to a chain of preventable errors. OSHA cited the production for serious safety violations. In the aftermath, SAGAFTRA and IATSE rewrote safety bulletins, banning live ammunition on sets, mandating licensed armorers, and requiring barrel inspections before every shot. Brandon Lee's death forced Hollywood to codify the rules that now protect everyone on set. The spotlight still burns hottest on the young. Today, social media multiplies the pressure and erases every boundary between fame and privacy. These tragedies are not just Hollywood's past. They warn us what happens when myth demands more than any human can survive. What price for a legend? Hollywood's biggest studios rush to label suspicious deaths as accidents, protecting stars and profits. But one autopsy exposed bruises on Natalie Wood that no publicist could explain. Suddenly, what had been called a tragedy became something else entirely. If a cause of death can be rewritten by a coroner's hand, what else have we been made to miss? Here is how forensic truth shattered Hollywood's carefully built illusions. Studio executives understood the value of a good story, and more importantly, the dangers of a bad one. When a star died under suspicious or unclear circumstances, the machinery of Hollywood publicity moved fast. Press agents worked the phones, crafting statements that described sudden deaths as accidents or tragic missteps, steering attention away from scandal, violence, or anything that might threaten a studio's financial interests. This was not just spin, it was a well-rehearsed system. Within hours of a death, trade papers and newspapers received carefully worded bulletins, often before the coroner had even finished the most basic examination. The goal was simple: protect the brand, shield the star's image, and keep audiences coming back to the box office. Profit was not the only thing at stake. A single scandal could derail an entire slate of films, cost millions in lost ticket sales, and even spark calls for censorship or government oversight. In the 1930s, MGM's fixers like Eddie Mannix and Howard Strickling became notorious for their ability to rewrite headlines, coach witnesses, and when necessary, make evidence disappear. Sometimes this meant arriving at a scene before the police, removing letters or personal items, or quietly paying off reporters to bury uncomfortable details. Studios coordinated with gossip columnists, feeding them the official version and freezing out anyone who asked too many questions. The system thrived on speed and control. Publicists issued statements about accidental overdoses, car crashes, or tragic household mishaps, often before autopsy results were available. Police and coroners, under immense pressure, sometimes echoed these accounts in their own early reports. The result was a seamless narrative, repeated across radio, newspapers, and newsreels. Hollywood stars did not die in shame or violence. They died in unfortunate but innocent accidents. But there was one part of the process that could not be managed by press releases or studio muscle. When a coroner documented injuries or toxicology results that did not fit the script, the truth had a way of resurfacing, sometimes years later, long after the headlines had faded. The autopsy could not be controlled, and it often changed the story forever. Natalie Wood's death on a cold November night in 1981 seemed at first to fit Hollywood's preferred script. The coroner's office labeled it accidental drowning and hypothermia. Her body was found floating near Catalina Island, and the story went that she had been drinking, tried to board a dinghy, slipped, and vanished into the darkness. The press echoed the official line. The case was closed, at least on paper. But the autopsy told a different story, one that refused to stay buried. Dr. Joseph Choi, the original pathologist, documented bruises on Wood's arms, legs, and face, as well as a scraped left cheek. The official report at the time did not explain how or when these injuries occurred, and they were brushed aside as possible results of a fall. Her blood alcohol level was 0.14%, with traces of medication that could have increased her impairment. Still, the narrative held a tragic accident, nothing more. 3 decades later, that narrative collapsed under the weight of its own contradictions. In 2011, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department reopened the case. A supplemental autopsy report, released in 2013 by Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Lakshmanan Satyavagaswaran, examined the original findings with modern forensic scrutiny. The new report described a 4-inch bruise on her right forearm, multiple fresh bruises and scratches on the backs of her legs, and superficial abrasions on her face and neck. These injuries, the examiner concluded, likely happened before Wood entered the water. The language of the report was careful but unmistakable. The examiner could not exclude a non-accidental cause. The manner of death was changed from accidental to undetermined. The official cause now read drowning and other undetermined factors. This forced investigators, witnesses, and the public to reconsider every detail. Statements that once seemed certain grew uncertain. The autopsy, an objective record immune to spin, had shattered the accident narrative. Wood's death was no longer just a Hollywood tragedy. It was an open question, and a warning that physical evidence can outlast even the most carefully managed story. A December morning in 1935 brought a chilling discovery to a quiet garage above the Pacific Palisades. Thelma Todd, a star of screwball comedies and the Hollywood party circuit, was found slumped behind the wheel of her car, dressed in an evening gown and mink wrap. The official explanation arrived quickly: accidental carbon monoxide poisoning. She had been locked out after a late-night argument, the story went, and sought warmth in the garage. But the details never quite fit. The maid who found her noticed blood around Todd's nose, and rumors swirled about bruises and a broken nose, injuries the autopsy called nothing more than a superficial lip contusion. The coroner's report confirmed lethal levels of carbon monoxide, but left out clear answers about the marks on her body. Some accounts suggest Todd had fainted or was already unconscious, before the engine ever started. Others whispered about threats, extortion, and the mob's interest in her cafe. A grand jury spent weeks probing violence, extortion, and injury, but found no evidence strong enough to overturn the accidental ruling. The official story remained carbon monoxide, no foul play. Yet the contradictions lingered, unexplained bruises, a timeline that did not add up, and a case that would remain unresolved. Todd's death stood as a reminder that, even in Hollywood's golden age, the autopsy could raise more questions than it answered. William Desmond Taylor's death began as a quiet headline. Another Hollywood figure found lifeless in his home, no sign of a struggle, nothing out of place. His valet, Henry Peavy, discovered the body on the morning of February 2nd, 1922, lying face down in the living room. At first, police and studio representatives whispered about natural causes. Taylor, after all, was a respected director, a man with no known enemies, at least none the studios wanted to acknowledge. The illusion unraveled when the coroner's team arrived. Turning Taylor over, they found a pool of blood beneath his jacket and vest. The wound itself was hidden, a single gunshot to the back, its entry point masked by layers of clothing. Powder burns on the fabric pointed to a close-range shot. The bullet had torn through his body, but left his valuables untouched. A diamond ring still on his finger, cash in his pocket. The scene was too neat for a robbery gone wrong. As word of the autopsy spread, the story exploded. Newspapers abandoned the idea of a natural death. Suspects multiplied: a jealous actress, a spurned lover, a shadowy blackmailer. Studio fixers tried to control the damage, but the facts were out. Hollywood's first great murder scandal was born. The autopsy didn't just contradict the official line, it forced the world to see the industry's secrets in the harsh light of day. Taylor's unsolved murder became a template for every Hollywood cover-up that followed, proving that sometimes the truth can only be found beneath the surface. Bob Crane's death in 1978 shattered any illusion that a Hollywood tragedy could always be explained away. Found bludgeoned in his Scottsdale apartment, Crane's case began with confusion. Early speculation ranged from heart attack to accident, but the autopsy cut through the rumors. The medical examiner documented multiple depressed fractures on the right rear of Crane's skull, each blow marked by parallel ridges and embedded bone fragments. The pattern matched a rigid, heavy object, possibly a camera tripod. There were no defensive wounds, no alcohol or drugs in his system, and the force required far exceeded what a fall or collapse could cause. The official ruling was blunt force trauma, homicide. The crime scene offered no closure. The murder weapon was never found, and the only suspect was acquitted. For Crane, the autopsy did not just rewrite the story. It erased any room for doubt. 3 decades later, Brittany Murphy's death in 2009 revealed a different kind of uncertainty. The official autopsy cited pneumonia and severe anemia, with multiple prescription drugs present, but all within therapeutic range. The coroner's report described her lungs heavy with fluid, her hemoglobin dangerously low. There were no signs of trauma, no illicit substances, nothing to indicate violence. Yet questions lingered. 5 months after Murphy's passing, her husband, Simon Monjack, died in the same house, from the same combination of pneumonia and anemia. Environmental toxins and neglect became topics for speculation, but follow-up toxicology and environmental tests found no conclusive evidence of poisoning or foul play. Forensic clarity did not bring closure, just a deeper divide between official findings and public suspicion. In Hollywood's modern era, even the most thorough autopsy can leave the truth unresolved. Today, an autopsy remains the last line of defense against convenient fictions. As celebrities' deaths are still disputed and public trust wavers, the lesson endures. Science confronts what spin cannot. In the end, the evidence outlives the narrative. What story will future facts rewrite next?
Behind the glamour of old Hollywood was a hotbed of scandal. Think love triangles, blackmail, and rumors so wild they'd make Twitter explode today. The Clark Gable and Loretta Young love child scandal. One of the most whispered about was the rumor that Clark Gable fathered a secret child with Loretta Young. The year was 1935, and the two were co-stars in The Call of the Wild. Off camera, it was said sparks flew. Gable, married to socialite Rhea Langham, had a reputation for on-set flings. Loretta Young, on the other hand, was known for her strict Catholic faith and carefully curated image of innocence. After filming Wrapped, Young disappeared from the spotlight. Months later, she returned, announcing she had adopted a baby girl named Judy. Her story was that Judy was an orphan who needed a home, but Judy's striking resemblance to Gable, right down to his distinctive ears, made the cover story hard to believe. Whispers of an affair and a secret pregnancy circulated immediately. Both stars stayed quiet. Gable, often referred to as the King of Hollywood, never publicly addressed the rumors. Young stuck to her adoption claim, protecting her career and reputation. Insiders, however, hinted that Gable made secret visits to Judy, further fueling the speculation. MGM reportedly stepped in to bury the story, fearful of how it might damage its stars. For nearly 6 decades, the truth remained hidden. It wasn't until 1994 that Young, in a rare interview, confirmed what many had long suspected. Judy was her biological daughter, the result of what she described as a non-consensual encounter with Gable during the filming of The Call of the Wild. This shocking revelation cast the scandal in a far darker light, reframing what had been romanticized as an affair into a story of exploitation. The confession added complexity to both Gable and Young's public personas. For Judy, it ended a lifetime of rumors, but also exposed the darker side of old Hollywood. Joan Crawford's alleged blue movies. Her career was the definition of Hollywood success, but behind her polished image, whispers of a scandal threatened to tarnish her legacy. By the 1930s, Crawford was one of MGM's brightest stars. However, rumors suggested her rise to fame had a darker backstory. The claims that before her Hollywood breakthrough, she'd appeared in adult films to make ends meet. These films, often called stag films, were part of an underground scene in the 1920s. Crawford, known then as Lucille LeSueur, was said to have participated in these productions during her early days as a struggling dancer. Fans found her swift transformation into a Hollywood star suspicious, speculating that someone powerful had helped her bury her past. Eddie Mannix, MGM's infamous fixer, was often linked to these rumors. Mannix was the studio's go-to guy for cleaning up messes and protecting its stars. Allegedly, he stepped in to handle the Crawford situation, tracking down and destroying any negatives of the supposed films. MGM was known for its obsession with controlling the public image of its stars, so the idea isn't far-fetched. Still, no concrete proof of Mannix's involvement, or the films themselves, has ever surfaced. Crawford, for her part, denied the allegations her entire life. She called the rumors malicious lies meant to drag her down. Decades later, her adopted daughter Christina reignited public interest in Crawford's private life with her controversial book, Mommy Dearest. While the memoir didn't address the adult film rumors directly, its shocking portrayal of Crawford added fuel to the fire about her hidden past. Despite the intrigue, no evidence has ever confirmed the existence of these alleged films. Were they a smear tactic against a powerful woman in Hollywood, or was there some truth to the whispers? We may never know. But the rumors have ensured that Crawford's name remains as infamous as it is iconic, proving that Hollywood's obsession with scandal knows no bounds. Errol Flynn's espionage allegations. He was the ultimate Hollywood swashbuckler, famous for his charisma and swordplay. But during World War II, a darker story started to circulate. Flynn, the man behind Robin Hood's smile, was rumored to be a Nazi spy. As wild as it sounded, The FBI took these whispers seriously and kept an active file on him. The allegations weren't baseless. Flynn had a close friendship with Hermann Urban, an Austrian doctor with confirmed Nazi ties. The two shared a love of travel, but Urban's documented connections to German intelligence raised alarms. Flynn's frequent trips to Europe during the war didn't help his case. Add to that his Austrian roots and his perceived indifference to the Allied cause, and the rumors began to stick. The conspiracy gained momentum in 1980, thanks to Charles Hyam's book Errol Flynn, The Untold Story. Hyam painted Flynn as a double agent, claiming the actor passed information to the Nazis while maintaining his Hollywood image. The book alleged Flynn's charm and international lifestyle made him the perfect spy. It also accused Flynn of using his Hollywood clout to help Urban and other Nazi sympathizers. But Hyam's claims were heavily criticized. Historians and Flynn supporters argued the evidence was flimsy and speculative. The FBI's files, while extensive, lacked any smoking gun. Flynn's defenders labeled Hyam's book a hit piece, accusing the author of exaggerating for shock value. Many believe the rumors were fueled by Flynn's reckless lifestyle rather than actual treachery. Despite the pushback, the damage was done. The mere suggestion of espionage left a stain on Flynn's legacy. Even today, the idea of Hollywood's most dashing hero harboring Nazi sympathies remains a tantalizing what if. So what's the truth? Was Flynn just an adventure junkie with bad judgment in friends, or did his charm mask something far more sinister? The lack of definitive evidence keeps the mystery alive, leaving fans and critics to debate whether Flynn's greatest act was on-screen or off. Marilyn Monroe's mysterious diaries. Her death in 1962 left behind more questions than answers. One of the most persistent rumors revolves around her alleged secret diaries. These journals supposedly contained shocking details about her relationships with John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert. For decades, these rumored diaries have fueled conspiracy theories and added to the intrigue surrounding Monroe's life and death. Monroe was known for keeping journals. She used them to write poetry, reflect on her life, and document personal experiences. Biographer Anthony Summers, in his book Goddess: The Secret Lives of Marilyn Monroe, suggested she recorded sensitive details from conversations with the Kennedys. Allegedly, some entries included political secrets and information that could have made her a liability. The circumstances of Monroe's death have only added to the speculation. Found lifeless in her Brentwood home, she was officially ruled a victim of a barbiturate overdose. However, the involvement of the FBI and LAPD in the investigation raised eyebrows. Rumors claim Monroe's house was searched extensively, and anything incriminating, like the alleged diaries, was quietly removed. Some close to Monroe, including her friends, insisted they had seen her write about her encounters with powerful men, adding fuel to the fire. Despite decades of speculation, no one has ever found these diaries. Some believe they were destroyed to protect the reputations of high-profile figures. Others argue the diaries never existed, suggesting they were invented by the media to sensationalize her tragic story. The lack of evidence hasn't stopped books, documentaries, and theorists from speculating about what they might have contained. Charles Chaplin's paternity battle. Charles Chaplin may have revolutionized film, but his personal life was often front-page news. By the 1940s, Chaplin was already a magnet for controversy, and the 1943 paternity suit filed by Joan Barry added fuel to the fire. Barry, a 22-year-old aspiring actress, claimed Chaplin was the father of her daughter, Carol Ann. The case quickly became a media frenzy, overshadowing Chaplin's cinematic brilliance. Barry's relationship with Chaplin had ended before her pregnancy, and he firmly denied fathering her child. He pointed to Barry's erratic behavior, stalking him, breaking into his home, as evidence of her instability. Still, her claims gained momentum, and the case went to court. In a bid to prove his innocence, Chaplin agreed to a blood test. At the time, this was cutting-edge science. The results were clear. Chaplin was not the biological father, but there was a catch. Under California law, blood tests were inadmissible in paternity cases. The jury ruled against Chaplin, ordering him to pay child support. The verdict caused public outrage, with many questioning the fairness of the decision. The scandal didn't stop in the courtroom. It gave Chaplin's enemies, including FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, exactly what they needed to intensify their attacks. Hoover, who was already suspicious of Chaplin's political leanings, used the trial to paint him as both immoral and un-American. The FBI's campaign against Chaplin wasn't subtle. It added pressure to an already tense situation, leading to his forced departure from the U.S. in 1952. He relocated to Switzerland, where he spent the rest of his life. Despite the controversy, Chaplin continued making groundbreaking films, though the paternity case cast a long shadow over his later years. Judy Garland's alleged drug coercion. Judy's talent lit up the screen, but her life behind the scenes told a darker story. Her career, especially during her teenage years, has been heavily scrutinized for the alleged exploitation she endured under MGM's iron grip. Many believe the studio orchestrated her dependency on drugs to keep her working at an unrelenting pace. Garland was just 13 when she signed with MGM. While her voice was unmatched, executives cruelly criticized her appearance, labeling her the Little Hunchback. To fit Hollywood's rigid standards, she was subjected to harsh dietary controls. Reports suggest her meals consisted of black coffee, chicken soup, and diet pills, all closely monitored by studio staff. The most shocking claims involve amphetamines, pep pills, allegedly given to Garland to keep her energized for marathon filming schedules. During The Wizard of Oz, she was said to work up to 18-hour days, running on little more than these stimulants. To help her sleep, barbiturates were reportedly prescribed, creating a dangerous cycle of dependency. By adulthood, Garland's struggles with addiction were undeniable. Her personal life and career began to show the strain. She often spoke candidly about her experience with the studio system, saying, "They had us working days and nights on end. They'd give us pills to keep us on our feet long after we were exhausted, then knock us out with sleeping pills when the work was done." Her battles didn't stop there. She faced public breakdowns, hospitalizations, and strained relationships. Despite these challenges, her raw talent and resilience kept her fighting for her place in Hollywood. Garland's tragic death in 1969, at just 47 years old, was attributed to an overdose. It was a heartbreaking end for a star who had given so much to the industry but received so little care in return. Her story remains a grim reminder of how old Hollywood often treated its stars as commodities rather than people, prioritizing profit over well-being. Judy Garland will always be remembered for her brilliance, but her struggles highlight the darker side of fame in the industry's golden era. The murder mystery of Thelma Todd. Her death in December 1935 stunned Hollywood. Known as the Ice Cream Blonde, she was beloved for her comedic timing and glamorous looks. At 29, Todd was a star on the rise, transitioning from silent films to talkies with ease. She also ran Thelma Todd's Sidewalk Cafe, a hotspot for celebrities along the Pacific Coast Highway. But her success was overshadowed by her mysterious death, which has remained unsolved. Todd's body was found slumped in her car inside the garage of her lover and business partner, Roland West. The garage, located above her cafe, became the center of intense speculation. The coroner ruled her death accidental, caused by carbon monoxide poisoning from her car's running engine. Still, the details surrounding her death didn't add up, sparking rumors that refused to die. Weeks before her death, Todd allegedly received threats from mobsters demanding money from her cafe. Organized crime figures saw her business as prime real estate for their operations. Her refusal to comply may have put her in danger. Adding fuel to the fire, Todd was seen arguing at a party the night before with her ex-husband, Pat DeSico, who had known mob connections. Then there was Roland West. West's controlling behavior and rocky relationship with Todd made him another prime suspect in the public's eyes. Some believed West locked her in the garage after an argument, not realizing the car was still running. West's shifting accounts of that night only deepened the suspicion. The coroner's report didn't help matters. It mentioned minor bruises on Todd's face and body, leading to speculation about a possible struggle. Yet there were no clear signs of foul play, leaving investigators without solid evidence. Despite the public outcry, the case was closed as an accidental death. Thelma Todd's story is still a favorite among true crime buffs. Was it a tragic accident? A mob hit? A lover's quarrel gone horribly wrong? The truth remains elusive, ensuring her death remains one of Hollywood's most talked-about mysteries. Rock Hudson's hidden truth. He had it all: looks, charm, and a career most actors could only dream of. He became Hollywood's go-to leading man in the 1950s, starring in romantic hits that solidified his image as the ultimate symbol of masculinity. Fans loved him, studios relied on him, and his name alone could sell out theaters. But behind the perfectly polished exterior was a secret that Hollywood worked overtime to keep hidden. Rumors about Hudson's sexuality began circulating early in his career. Back then, even a hint of being gay could end a star's career. Hudson's agent, Henry Wilson, was infamous for covering up scandals and managing his clients' images with ruthless efficiency. When whispers about Hudson started growing louder, Wilson orchestrated a hasty solution: a marriage. In 1955, Hudson married Phyllis Gates, Wilson's secretary. The timing wasn't subtle. It came right after a tabloid threatened to publish a story about Hudson's personal life. Gates later claimed she didn't know Hudson was gay when they married, but skeptics have doubted her version of events. The marriage lasted 3 years, but by then it had served its purpose, silencing the rumors. Behind closed doors, Hudson lived a carefully compartmentalized life. Close friends and co-stars knew the truth, but loyalty and fear of the industry's backlash kept them quiet. Studio executives wielded immense power and had no problem squashing tabloid stories that could tarnish their golden boy. Everything changed in 1985 when Hudson announced he had immune deficiency syndrome. He was the first major celebrity to publicly disclose the diagnosis, a move that shocked fans and confirmed the rumors. The revelation came at a time when advanced HIV disease was deeply stigmatized, and Hudson's bravery helped bring global attention to the crisis. His death later that year was mourned worldwide and exposed the hypocrisy of an industry that demanded perfection at any cost. Lana Turner and the Johnny Stompanato murder. Lana Turner's relationship with Johnny Stompanato had everything tabloids could dream of: a Hollywood icon, a mobster boyfriend, and an explosive ending. Stompanato, a known associate of crime boss Mickey Cohen, wasn't just bad news. He was dangerous. Despite his charm, his violent streak quickly turned their romance into a toxic mess of arguments and reconciliations. By 1958, the relationship had reached its breaking point. On April 4th, an argument in Turner's Beverly Hills home escalated to violence. Turner later testified that Stompanato threatened her, causing her 14-year-old daughter, Cheryl Crane, to step in. Grabbing a kitchen knife, Cheryl stabbed him in the abdomen. He died almost instantly. The fallout was chaotic. The media swarmed Turner's home, turning the incident into a nationwide scandal. Headlines screamed speculation about what really happened that night. At the coroner's inquest, Cheryl claimed she acted in self-defense to protect her mother. Turner backed her up, tearfully recounting the abuse she'd endured. The jury ruled it justifiable homicide, but whispers of a different story refused to die. Some questioned whether Cheryl, a teenager with no history of violence, could deliver such a precise fatal wound. Others believed Turner herself had wielded the knife and that Cheryl took the blame to save her mother's career. Stompanato's mob connections added another layer of intrigue. There were rumors that his death wasn't an accident at all. Some suggested Mickey Cohen had orchestrated the killing either to eliminate liability or settle a personal grudge. Cohen, of course, denied any involvement. Despite the jury's decision, the scandal haunted Turner. While she continued acting, her glamorous image was forever tied to the tragedy. Cheryl, too, struggled with the weight of public scrutiny. The case remains one of old Hollywood's most infamous stories, blending celebrity drama with true crime. Whether it was a desperate act of protection or a cover-up, the Stompanato murder still fuels endless speculation. Decades later, it's clear this was no ordinary Hollywood breakup. It was a headline-grabbing scandal that left scars on everyone involved. The Black Dahlia and Hollywood. The murder of Elizabeth Short, better known as the Black Dahlia, remains one of Hollywood's darkest mysteries. In January 1947, her mutilated body was found in a vacant Los Angeles lot. The crime was horrifying and left posed in a gruesome manner. The case immediately grabbed headlines, with every sordid detail plastered across newspapers. Short, just 22 years old, had come to L.A. chasing dreams of becoming an actress. Like many others, she struggled to find work, often relying on friends or admirers for support. When her murder hit the news, her personal life became fodder for speculation. Reporters and the public alike were eager to link her to Hollywood's elite. Rumors swirled that she had attended exclusive parties thrown by powerful industry figures. Some even suggested she had rejected the wrong man's advances, which led to her untimely death. One theory that refuses to die is the involvement of Dr. George Hodel, a prominent and wealthy physician. Hodel was known for hosting extravagant gatherings attended by artists, intellectuals, and Hollywood insiders. Decades later, his own son, Steve Hodel, a former LAPD detective, accused him of being the killer. Steve presented evidence, including old photos of a woman resembling Short and his father's medical expertise, which matched the surgical precision of the crime. The accusations against George Hodel didn't come out of nowhere. During the 1940s, he was investigated for other crimes, including the suspicious death of his secretary. Although Hodel was never charged in the Black Dahlia case, his connection to it has fueled endless speculation. Elizabeth Short's murder remains unsolved, but her name is forever tied to the shadowy side of Hollywood. Whether she was targeted for her ambitions, a chance encounter, or something more sinister, the crime highlighted the dangers lurking in the industry.
The public funeral looked perfect. Cameras, flowers, fans crying in the streets. What no one saw was the autopsy report that listed a detail so strange, doctors still talk about it today. This story begins with what the coroner found when the cameras stopped rolling. Judy Garland's final report. London, the 22nd of June, 1969. In a rented house in Belgravia, Judy Garland's new husband wakes up and finds the bathroom door blocked. When he finally gets it open, Garland is on the floor, unresponsive, at just 47 years old. The rush to save her is short. Paramedics confirm what the scene already suggests. She is gone. Only months earlier, she had married again and was singing in small London clubs, trying to rebuild her career. Now the question is brutal and simple. How did one of Hollywood's most famous voices end up dead on a bathroom floor in London? The answer starts at the coroner's inquest. The pathologist finds a high level of barbiturates in her blood from the drug quinalbarbitone, a strong sleeping pill she had used for years. It is more than a normal dose, enough to slow and stop breathing during sleep, but not the huge amount often seen in clear suicide cases. Her stomach is empty. There are no undissolved tablets inside. That detail tells the coroner she did not swallow a handful of pills all at once. The barbiturates built up in her system over time. The official ruling uses a cold phrase, incautious self-overdosage. In simple terms, she took her usual pills, but her body could not handle them anymore. The death is recorded as accidental. There are no notes, no stage scene, no proof that she meant to end her life that night. The coroner finds no signs of violence, no injuries that point to another person in the room. For decades, doctors and producers gave her stimulants to perform and sedatives to sleep. By the time she reached London, those habits were part of her daily life. The report strips all of that drama down to bare facts. A 47-year-old woman with a long history of barbiturate use, a strong sleeping drug taken once too often, a body that stopped breathing in the middle of the night. Bruce Lee's swollen brain. The news hits Hong Kong on the 20th of July, 1973. Bruce Lee, the man selling packed theaters with Enter the Dragon, is reported dead at just 32. The shock spreads fast. Film crews, reporters, and fans all want one thing: an explanation that makes sense. That afternoon, he had spent hours working on script details with producer Raymond Chow. Later, he visited the apartment of actress Betty Ting Pei. While there, the martial arts star complained about a headache. Ting Pei gave him a tablet of Equigesic, a painkiller that combined aspirin and a tranquilizer. He lay down to rest in a bedroom and did not come out. When others tried to wake him, he did not respond. Doctors at the hospital could not bring him back. The focus moved quickly to the autopsy. Pathologists examined his organs and ordered tests. The most important finding sat in the skull. His brain was swollen, a condition called cerebral edema. Reports at the time said it weighed well above the typical range for an adult male brain. That swelling became the official medical key to his death. The coroner ruled that he had died from a sudden reaction that caused the brain to swell. The term used in the inquest was death by misadventure. In plain language, that meant an unexpected, accidental medical reaction, not an attack, not self-harm. The painkiller he took shortly before he lay down was listed as the likely trigger. From that point, the facts stay narrow. There were no signs of major injury on his body, no evidence that he had been assaulted, no clear proof of poison. The report points to the edema and an adverse reaction, then stops. Elvis Presley's strained heart. Graceland, the 16th of August, 1977. In the main house, Elvis Presley's fiancée finds him on the bathroom floor, unresponsive. Paramedics rush him to Baptist Memorial Hospital in Memphis. Doctors work on him in the emergency room, but the resuscitation effort fails. He is declared dead that afternoon at 42. Attention switches almost immediately to the autopsy. A team of pathologists examines his organs and orders lab tests. Early statements from officials point to a heart problem. The first public language speaks of a likely cardiac rhythm disturbance, not a single massive heart attack caught in the act. Inside the body, the doctors see clear signs of long-term strain. Later accounts from people involved in the case describe significant coronary artery disease and an enlarged heart. His weight had climbed, and he had a long record of high blood pressure and other risk factors. On paper, he looks far from the energetic young singer fans remember from the 1950s. Toxicology testing shows a long list of prescription drugs. There are sedatives, painkillers, and other medications that he had been taking under medical supervision. The levels raise questions about chronic use and how those substances may have affected his heart, breathing, and digestion. The presence of many drugs in combination becomes one of the most discussed parts of his file. Another detail that emerges in later reports comes from the condition of his intestines. Physicians who reviewed the case describe severe, long-term constipation and a large amount of compacted material in the colon. They argue that this problem links to years of medication and poor diet, and that it likely made him uncomfortable and less active for a long time before his death. John Belushi's fatal speedball. Sunset Boulevard, the 5th of March, 1982. At the Chateau Marmont in West Hollywood, hotel staff and friends become alarmed when they cannot rouse John Belushi in his bungalow. He has spent the previous night and early morning with visitors, drinking and using drugs. By the time paramedics arrive, the comedian is already beyond help. He is pronounced dead at 33. The Los Angeles County Coroner's Office takes over. During the autopsy, the pathologist notes track marks on his arms and sends blood and tissue samples for toxicology. The lab results show high levels of heroin and cocaine in his system. The combination is known as a speedball, a mix that puts huge stress on the heart and central nervous system. The official cause of death is recorded as acute cocaine and heroin intoxication. That phrase means the drugs did not simply appear as background use. They directly triggered the collapse, most likely through sudden respiratory failure and heart strain. There are no signs of a prolonged illness, No evidence that an underlying natural disease is to blame. At first, the focus is on the tragedy itself. Belushi had gone from Saturday Night Live to movie success with films like Animal House and The Blues Brothers. Now, the autopsy shows a very different reality behind the jokes. In the days that follow, witnesses start talking about who supplied the heroin and who was in the room when the injections took place. One key witness is Kathy Evelyn Smith, a friend who had been with him during his final hours. In later interviews and statements, she admits to giving him drug injections. Her admissions, combined with the toxicology findings, move the case from a simple overdose inquiry to a criminal investigation. Prosecutors in Los Angeles build a case that her actions helped cause his death. Years later, Smith is charged and pleads no contest to involuntary manslaughter and drug charges. She serves time in prison. The coroner's report, with its clear ruling on the speedball mixture, plays a central part in that process. Karen Carpenter's collapsing heart. The call to paramedics goes out from Downey, California on the 4th of February, 1983. Karen Carpenter has collapsed at her parents' home after returning from a doctor's visit. She is taken to Downey Community Hospital. Doctors work on her in the emergency room, but their efforts fail. She is declared dead at 32. The medical history already on file is serious. For years, her family and doctors have watched drastic changes in her weight. Behind the polished performances of the Carpenters, she has battled anorexia nervosa, a disorder that affects eating habits, hormone levels, muscles, and the heart. By the time she returns to California from treatment efforts in New York, her body is in a fragile state. The Los Angeles County coroner orders a full autopsy. The exam shows that her heart has failed. Toxicology testing looks for drugs that might explain the collapse. The key term in the final report is emetine cardiotoxicity due to or as a consequence of anorexia nervosa. Emetine is a substance found in certain strong vomiting agents. In plain terms, the coroner links damage to the heart muscle with long-term disordered behavior around food and purging. This ruling is an important detail. It does not point to a sudden party overdose or a random event on a single day. It ties her death to a pattern that stretched across years, including extreme dieting, loss of body mass, and stress on the cardiovascular system. Her body weight had dropped far below a safe range. The weakened heart could not handle the strain any longer. The exam does not show heavy, illegal drug use. There is no evidence of foul play. There is no sign that someone forced a harmful dose into her system at the last moment. Instead, the report describes a young woman whose heart gave out after a long battle with an illness that had gone under-recognized in public conversation. After the autopsy, medical writers and mental health experts start pointing to this case when they explain anorexia nervosa to the public. Her death certificate lists a quiet but deadly chain: an eating disorder, chronic strain on organs, and a final cardiac collapse in a family home, far from the concert halls where audiences once stood and applauded. Tupac Shakur's autopsy record. Las Vegas, the 7th of September, 1996. The city is crowded for a heavyweight boxing match. After the fight, Tupac Shakur rides in the passenger seat of a BMW sedan, part of a small convoy moving through late-night traffic. At a red light near the Strip, a white Cadillac pulls up. Gunfire erupts from the other car. Shakur is hit several times. Emergency crews rush him to the University Medical Center of Southern Nevada. Surgeons operate to control internal bleeding and repair damage. He is moved to intensive care. Over the next 6 days, he remains in the hospital under heavy care, with family and friends visiting under tight security. Despite the medical team's efforts, his condition worsens. On the 13th of September, at about 4 in the afternoon, he is pronounced dead at 25. The Clark County Coroner's Office conducts the autopsy. The report documents multiple gunshot wounds. 2 bullets struck his chest, damaging a lung and vital blood vessels. Another wound is recorded in the thigh area, with a further graze injury to the hand. Doctors note that he developed respiratory failure and cardiopulmonary arrest as a direct result of those injuries. Toxicology tests check for alcohol and drugs. Public summaries of the report focus on the ballistic injuries rather than any substance findings. The cause of death is listed clearly as multiple gunshot wounds. There is no mention of a major pre-existing disease that might have made the event more likely. The death is classified as a homicide. Very little of the full document is released, but enough detail reaches the public to establish the basic medical facts. A young man in normal health suffers serious chest wounds, massive internal bleeding, and organ damage that even rapid surgery cannot reverse. Those points sit in stark contrast with later conspiracy theories that claim he survived or fled. Over the years, the case remains unsolved. Investigations move through witness interviews, rival gang links, and changes in suspects. None of that alters what the coroner recorded. Anna Nicole's drug cocktail. Security at a Florida hotel calls 911 on the 8th of February 2007. Anna Nicole Smith is unresponsive in her suite at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Hollywood, Florida. Her bodyguard and a registered nurse on site perform CPR until paramedics arrive. She is taken to Memorial Regional Hospital. Doctors try to revive her. She is pronounced dead at 39. The Broward County Medical Examiner, Dr. Joshua Perper, leads the investigation. He orders a full autopsy and toxicology panel. Weeks of speculation follow in the press. Some talk about foul play. Others repeat rumors about heavy illegal drug use. The exam and lab work cut through those claims. When Perper announces the findings, the wording is precise. The cause of death is combined drug intoxication. The main drug listed is chloral hydrate, a strong sedative that had once been used as a sleep aid. In her blood and tissues, the lab also finds several benzodiazepines, including medications in the same family as Valium and Ativan. They are all legal prescription drugs, but together they form a dangerous mix. The report notes that the levels of chloral hydrate are high enough to be toxic by themselves. The other sedatives in her system add to the effect. They slow breathing, weaken protective reflexes, and strain the body's ability to clear the drugs. Perper explains that chloral hydrate tipped the balance. In other words, it was the key factor in a stack of sedating medicines. Toxicology identifies methadone only in her bile, not at levels that caused the collapse that day. No illegal drugs show up as contributing agents. The manner of death is ruled accidental. The report also mentions infections and physical stress as secondary factors that made her weaker and more vulnerable to the overdose. Another disturbing detail comes from the prescription patterns. Many of the drugs in her name were actually written under other names linked to people close to her. That raises questions about how easily she could obtain sedatives and how closely her use was monitored. Michael Jackson's propofol file. The 25th of June, 2009, in a rented mansion in Holmby Hills, Los Angeles. Michael Jackson is in his bedroom preparing for a long run of This Is It comeback concerts. He has struggled with severe insomnia. His personal physician, Dr. Conrad Murray, is in the house to help him sleep. By late morning, Jackson has already received several sedatives, including drugs from the benzodiazepine group, under Murray's care. They do not bring the sleep he wants. According to later testimony, Jackson keeps asking for milk, his word for propofol, a powerful anesthetic normally used in operating rooms. Murray finally gives him a dose of propofol through an intravenous line while monitoring him alone in the bedroom. There is no anesthesiology team, no ventilator, and no standard hospital equipment. At some point after the injection, Murray notices that Jackson is no longer breathing and has a weak or absent pulse. A 911 call goes out from the house at 12:21 p.m. Paramedics arrive to find Jackson unresponsive. They continue CPR and other measures on scene, then transport him to Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center. After further attempts to restart his heart, doctors pronounce him dead at 2:26 p.m. He is 50 years old. The Los Angeles County coroner performs an autopsy the next day. The toxicology report shows significant levels of propofol in his blood, along with lorazepam and other sedatives. The official cause of death is listed as acute propofol intoxication, with the benzodiazepines noted as contributing factors. The manner of death is classified as homicide. Investigators focus on how and where the drug was used. Propofol bottles and medical supplies are found in the bedroom and nearby areas, not in a clinic setting. Expert witnesses later explain that propofol should only be used by trained teams with full monitoring and airway support. That standard was not met in this case. In 2011, a Los Angeles jury finds Conrad Murray guilty of involuntary manslaughter. The verdict rests on the coroner's findings and on evidence that he gave a surgical anesthetic in a private home without proper safeguards. Brittany Murphy's pneumonia case. On the morning of the 20th of December, 2009, emergency services receive a call from a house in the Hollywood Hills. 32-year-old actor Brittany Murphy has collapsed in the bathroom. Her mother and husband say she had been sick for days with flu-like symptoms. Paramedics rush her to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. At the hospital, she goes into cardiac arrest. Doctors cannot reverse it. She is pronounced dead. The Los Angeles County coroner takes over. An autopsy is performed the next day. The exam notes a young woman with recent weight changes and signs of illness in the lungs. Tissue samples and fluids are sent to the lab. Toxicology testing begins to look for alcohol, illegal drugs, and prescription medicine levels. When the final report is released, the main cause of death is listed as untreated community-acquired pneumonia. The document also names iron deficiency, anemia, and multiple drug intoxication from prescription and over-the-counter medications as contributing factors. Those drugs include common pain relievers and cold medicines. The levels are not high enough to kill her by themselves, but they make her weaker while the infection grows. The anemia is another red flag. Her red blood cell count is low. That means her body is carrying less oxygen at a time when her lungs are already under strain. Together, the lung infection, the anemia, and the sedating effect of some medicines form a chain that ends in her collapse at home. The coroner classifies the manner of death as accidental. The report does not show foul play or a deliberate overdose, and investigators find no sign of a violent assault. The findings move the story away from rumors of heavy illegal drug use and toward a quieter but still deadly mix of sickness and self-treatment. Public health experts speak to news outlets after the autopsy. They warn that serious chest infections in young adults need fast medical treatment, not days of home remedies. Later, some family members question the conclusions, suggesting toxins in the house. Federal tests on samples from the home do not support a poisoning theory. Official records stay unchanged. Whitney Houston's bathtub report. Hotel staff at the Beverly Hilton moved quickly on the afternoon of the 11th of February, 2012. In a fourth-floor suite, singer Whitney Houston is found unresponsive in a bathtub. Efforts to revive her begin in the room. Paramedics continue care when they arrive, but she does not respond. She is pronounced dead at 48. The Los Angeles County Coroner's Office opens an investigation. An autopsy is carried out the next day. The pathologist examines her heart, lungs, and other organs. Blood and tissue samples are collected for toxicology. In the meantime, media outlets speculate about overdose, relapse, and violent scenarios. When the official report is released, the primary cause of death is listed as drowning. Two major contributing conditions are named. One is atherosclerotic heart disease, meaning a buildup of plaque in the coronary arteries. The other is recent cocaine use. Together, they create a setting in which even a brief loss of consciousness in the bathtub can become fatal. Toxicology results also show the presence of several other substances. These include a sedating anxiety medication, an antihistamine often used for allergies or sleep, and a muscle relaxant. Levels are in a range that can cause drowsiness and impaired judgment, but are not by themselves recorded as lethal. No alcohol is found in the blood sample. Marijuana metabolites are present from earlier use. When the coroner holds a press conference, the findings confirm what independent doctors had suspected. The mix of chronic heart disease, stimulant use, and extra sedating medicines made any time alone in water a serious risk. The manner of death is ruled accidental. The report does not support theories of a staged scene or a direct physical attack by another person. Instead, it outlines a series of risk factors: a heart already under strain, active stimulant use, and additional medicines that reduce alertness. In that context, a hotel bathtub becomes a dangerous place. Investigators review security footage, staff accounts, and timelines. Nothing in that material changes what the autopsy shows.
The world was sold a dream of happy, talented children lighting up Hollywood's golden age. But behind the studio gloss, parents pushed their sons and daughters to breaking point. From Judy Garland's endless doses of pills to Jackie Coogan's fortune stolen by his own mother, the consequences were lifelong and devastating. What was really happening to these perfect child stars, and how did their parents get away with it? Fan magazines in the 1930s and the 1940s filled their pages with portraits of grinning children under studio lights, each one posed as the embodiment of innocence and joy. Photoplay, modern screen, and motion picture ran spreads of child stars in spotless living rooms, surrounded by doting parents, with captions promising readers a glimpse of Hollywood's happiest homes. Publicists and press agents worked closely with editors, supplying approved stories and carefully staged photographs. Smiling faces and playful scenes were not left to chance. Studios dictated every detail, from wardrobe to the arrangement of toys, ensuring nothing betrayed fatigue or tension. Behind these images, studio contracts granted producers sweeping control. Children signed exclusive deals, often for 7 years or more, that bound them to a single studio, with parents acting as gatekeepers and enforcers. The studio's publicity machines demanded that parents keep their children cheerful, available, and camera-ready, no matter the cost. Teachers on set reported to the studio, not outside authorities, and complaints about exhaustion or distress were quietly handled out of public view. The illusion of perfect childhoods sold tickets and products, making the smiling faces on magazine covers too valuable to question. Any hint of overwork, unhappiness, or family conflict was filtered out by editorial guidelines. The result was a seamless fantasy, children who never seemed to tire, parents who never faltered, and a world where the price of fame remained hidden from the fans who adored them. Judy Garland's earliest memories were shaped by the demands of the stage. By age 2, she was already performing with her sisters in the Gum family vaudeville act, traveling from town to town with barely a pause for rest. When MGM signed Judy at 13, the pace only intensified. The studio needed her bright-eyed and energetic on set, no matter how many hours she had worked the day before. Ethel Gum, Judy's mother, became the enforcer of this routine, overseeing her daughter's every move and making sure she never missed a cue. To keep Judy alert through endless rehearsals and late-night shoots, Ethel and the studio doctors introduced a strict pill regimen. Mornings began with amphetamines, pep pills that kept her awake and suppressed her appetite. At night, when exhaustion set in and sleep would not come, barbiturates were used to force her into rest. This cycle started when Judy was still a teenager and continued through her most famous films, including The Wizard of Oz. Biographers and former MGM staff have described how the studio medical department supplied these drugs as a matter of routine, with little concern for long-term effects. Production schedules and internal memos from the late 1930s referenced Judy's nervous exhaustion and described her as overstrung, but the solution was always the same: adjust her medication and keep the cameras rolling. One MGM note from this period called for medical supervision to ensure she remained camera-ready, yet there is no record of any real intervention to protect her health. Instead, the pill cycle became another part of the machinery that kept Judy working, her well-being sacrificed to the demands of the studio and her mother's ambitions. Natalie Wood's earliest studio photographs captured her as the perfect child star, wide-eyed, smiling, and seemingly fearless. But away from the cameras, her mother Maria Zakharenko's ambitions left little room for childhood fears or hesitation. On the set of The Green Promise in 1948, Natalie faced a scene that would haunt her for life. The script called for her character to cross a wooden bridge during a stage storm, the bridge collapsing beneath her into fast-moving water. Natalie, just 9 years old, pleaded with her mother and the director, terrified of the water and the stunt. Crew members later recalled her tears and desperate requests not to go through with it. Maria, determined to prove her daughter's professionalism and secure her future in Hollywood, insisted Natalie perform the stunt herself, ignoring both her fear and the warnings of those around her. During the take, the bridge mechanism malfunctioned. Natalie was thrown into the water, striking her wrist against a plank. The injury, widely described by biographers as a fracture, was met with little sympathy from Maria, who told Natalie to dry her tears and keep quiet about the pain. Publicity materials for the film showed her smiling at premieres, never hinting at the ordeal behind the scenes. The incident left Natalie with a lifelong fear of dark water, a phobia she would never fully escape. Years later, friends and family traced this terror back to that rain-soaked day on set, when her mother's demand for obedience outweighed her daughter's safety. The bridge scene stands as a stark example of how the drive for stardom could push a child far beyond reasonable limits with lasting consequences. Jackie Coogan's face was known across continents by the age of 7. His performance in The Kid made him one of the first true child celebrities, and his image sold everything from dolls to peanut butter. Studio contracts and endorsement deals funneled $3 to $4 million into accounts managed by his mother, Lillian Coogan, and her new husband, Arthur Bernstein. But when Jackie reached adulthood in 1935, the fortune he had earned was gone. Court filings from the 1938 civil suit revealed the stark reality. Ledgers submitted as evidence showed that of the estimated $3 to $4 million Jackie had brought in during his childhood, nearly all had been spent. The records detailed purchases of luxury cars, real estate, and personal expenses, almost none of it in Jackie's name. Lillian and Arthur claimed the money was used for supporting Jackie and maintaining the family's lifestyle, but legal arguments rested on the fact that under California law at the time, parents had full control over their child's earnings. Press coverage of the case gripped the public. Headlines in the Los Angeles Times and Variety chronicled the courtroom drama and the shocking gap between Jackie's earnings and what remained. One account noted that after years of work and litigation, Jackie was awarded only a fraction of his former fortune, a settlement cited in some reports as around $126,000. The outrage over his loss reached Sacramento, where lawmakers debated new protections for child performers. In 1939, the California legislature passed the Child Actors Bill, soon known as the Coogan Act, requiring that a portion of a child actor's income be preserved in trust beyond the reach of parents or guardians. The law carried Jackie's name, a permanent reminder of how easily a child's success could be turned into a parent's windfall. In 1944, a petition was filed in Washington State Superior Court requesting that Lillian Farmer be appointed guardian over her daughter, Frances. The legal paperwork, signed by Lillian and supported by medical affidavits, cited concerns about Frances's mental competence and ability to manage her own affairs. The court approved the petition, granting Lillian broad authority over Frances's person and estate. Letters of guardianship issued that year gave Lillian the power to make financial and medical decisions, including the right to authorize institutionalization. This legal arrangement removed Frances's ability to control her earnings, sign contracts, or refuse treatment. Hospital admission forms from Western State Hospital list Lillian as the responsible party, with her signature appearing on consent documents. The guardianship order and probate filings established a framework that allowed Frances's confinement to continue for years, with every major decision subject to her mother's approval. Intake records from Western State Hospital reveal the bureaucracy that sealed Frances Farmer's fate. Her file number, date of admission, and the signature of her mother Lillian appear alongside notations of mental incompetence. The hospital, built to house fewer than 2,000 patients, was running well over capacity by the mid-1940s. Wards were crowded, with beds lining the corridors and little privacy for anyone inside. Daily logs describe rigid routines, early wake-up calls, group meals, and hours spent in communal spaces under constant supervision. Patients faced strict regimens, with limited access to visitors and few opportunities to contest their confinement. Reports from state inspectors documented shortages of staff and supplies and the use of restraints and isolation for those labeled uncooperative. For Frances, the loss of autonomy was absolute. Every aspect of her life, from correspondence to medical treatment, required approval from the guardian who had placed her there. Today, child actors still face the pressures of fame and family ambition, despite stricter laws. Headlines reveal ongoing abuse and exploitation. The scars of old Hollywood are not just history. They echo in every new contract signed. Protecting children in entertainment remains a battle that is far from over. Share your thoughts below.